Preview.
Hello and welcome. My name is Zafar Iqbal and you are watching the Mojo Story. President Trump has announced a 25% tariff on Indian imports, accusing New Delhi of imposing excessively high tariffs. Now, in a sharp post on Truth Social, Trump has also lashed out at India's close defense and energy ties with Russia. You can see that post on your screen. He said that both nations could take down their dead economies together. Now, India has so far responded cautiously, stating it's studying the implications and remains committed to negotiating a fair, balanced, and mutually beneficial trade deal. But look at this post. He says, I don't care what India does with Russia. They can take their dead economies down together. For all I care, we have done very little business with India. Their tariffs are too high, among the highest in the world. Likewise, Russia and the USA do almost no business together. Let's keep it that way and tell Medvedev, the failed former president of Russia, and he goes on to to speak further on this. Now we got that response that Trump's playing the ultimate game with Russia, 50 days or 10. He should remember two things. Those are the posts that there are some of these reactions. Now we joined by an eminent guest today to discuss this. We're joined by Ambassador Veena Sikri, former senior diplomat. Welcome to Mojo Story, ma'am. Let me go directly to the point. Trump's criticism of India's ties with Russia, especially in the defense and energy, was unusually harsh. The language that he has used. How might this affect the bilateral relation between the two countries now?
Well, I think one has to take this whole issue in the global perspective. And India's response has been very, as you said correctly, very cautious. But India has also said that we will continue to negotiate in the best interest of our farmers, our entrepreneurs, and our MSMEs, the micro, small, and medium enterprises. So India is wanting to continue the negotiations. I think this statement may have been prompted, the timing of the statement by President Trump may have been prompted by various factors, but I think that from our side, we have not overreacted. We've done the correct thing. We've said we want to continue the negotiations. As far as the relationship with Russia is concerned, this is not a new response from the American side. They have at all times been trying to persuade India to reduce its purchases of oil from Russia, and have been using all kinds of implications for that. But it's strange because Europe, for example, is still continuing to purchase its oil and energy supplies from Russia, if not directly, then through India. You know, the
Yeah.
comes here, it's refined, and then goes to the European Union. America too still has its business with Russia, purchasing uranium and some other materials from there. So I think, keeping the global perspective, as I said, we are prepared to continue the negotiations, but we will not at this moment give up or change the stance or change the negotiating path, because you see, uh, the next round of negotiations between India and the USA are scheduled for middle of August. But this has come before that. This has come before that, and it's supposed to be effective from the 1st of August. I don't think that the impact on the Indian economy will be very big. I think the main thing you can look at, today's stock markets seem to have virtually brushed off this
Yeah.
statement by President Trump, and it's like, it may not be very up, but it's certainly not very down either. So it's
Right.
maintained an even balance. And I think that this is epitomizes the Indian economy, the Indian reaction. Everybody had taken this on board, and we were expecting, knowing President Trump's unpredictability. The business, the government, everybody had taken this on board and were in fact anticipating something like this would happen. So I think that we will have to continue on this even keel of negotiations, watching carefully. There are some issues, some items which the American market needs from India. The pharma, for example, where will they get new products immediately? The automobile components, where will you get the new products immediately? The Apple iPhone, which is going from India to the USA. So will the tariff be passed on to the consumers in America? So all these issues are there, and I'm sure there are many issues which the American economy also has to look at itself very carefully. And I think overall, to call India the tariff king, I think for the American market, the Indian tariffs, what are the calculated average of these tariffs is not very high, the impact on the American market, but doesn't matter. All in all, we maintain an even keel. We maintain a very cautious but pleasant demeanor, and I think when the negotiations are held
But
again,
but
we'll
but but
go to.
but ma'am, why should India maintain a pleasant demeanor? The fact is that this harsh language has been used. India is one of the growing economies of the world, and he calls it a dead economy.
Now let's see, as we know that the Indian economy, as stated by the IMF only earlier this week, a few days ago, the IMF had stated that they've upgraded India's growth rate from 6.2% to 6.4% for 25-26. And it is by far the fastest growing economy in the world, the fastest growing large economy in the world. And I think that this position is going to maintain itself. I don't see any change in this position because I do, as I've said, even the stock market has shrugged it off. The American markets, we know there's something they're going to need from India. So I don't think this is going to have a rapid deterrence or a rapid deteriorating effect on the Indian economy. And India's Make in India program is continuing. The investments are continuing. We saw just, I think, 24 or 36 hours ago, the India-US joint satellite, NISAR,
Yeah.
jointly built by NASA and ISRO, it took off. And so those programs are continuing. The ICET, other programs are continuing. There's a scheduled visit by President Trump in the fall to India for the Quad Summit. I think we have to take it very, very calmly and very, very cautiously, no doubt. I'm sure that our colleagues in the ministry, the cabinet colleagues, they are all doing their work very seriously at this very point, calculating the impact, calculating what can be done. We know that India has agreed to buy a very large amount of petroleum products from America. This is part of the deal that was being negotiated. And this first draft went to President Trump, but he wanted something more. And what that more is now going to be seen.
Right. But don't you think there's something intrinsically wrong somewhere? These bizarre statements are not only related to economy. President Trump has been making statements almost on a daily basis and suggesting that he stopped India-Pakistan war. He announced the ceasefire. Then he gave a statement about jets that were shot down. And consistently, he has been making these statements about the economy, calling India the tariff king, and going on to say that since India is a part of BRICS, so it will have to pay the penalty.
But let's very clear. I think this question of the Operation Sindoor, Yudh Viram, the pause. We are very clear. We are very, very clear in our minds on the facts of the situation. That this was a request from the Pakistan DGMO, and this was made directly to our DGMO. And in response, we accepted as a pause. And we have said repeatedly that we are following the situation very carefully. We know that only on Monday, the three Pakistan nationals accused of Operation Pahalgam have
Yeah,
been neutralized. So I
yeah,
think that we are following the situation very carefully. Now, we do know that President Trump has been making this claim repeatedly, but we have
yeah,
ourselves, whether it is in Parliament, whether it is on the telephone call that took place between Prime Minister Modi and President Trump, we've made it very clear that number one, trade talks have never been discussed.
yeah.
Whatever discussion took place, Vice President Vance called our Prime Minister, etc. But it was there was never any talk of trade or trade as a weapon or weaponizing trade. Nothing at all. It was never in the picture. So to say that because of the trade implications that India and Pakistan have come to a ceasefire, I don't think that's an accurate reflection of what our side, our Prime Minister, our External Affairs Minister has said repeatedly, even in Parliament. Even in Parliament, the External Affairs Minister was very clear on this point. Now, whether this was the immediate trigger or something else, it is
Yeah,
difficult to say. But I think that
yeah,
we have made it very clear that we are adhering to our side, and you know that. a few phone calls don't amount to mediation. And there was no
Right.
phone call between, I think, as our External Affairs Minister said in
Yeah.
Parliament, between 22nd June and 22nd April and June 16th, there was no telephone call between President Trump and Prime Minister Modi. So I think that uh, that may be as it is, but overall, we have given a very, very good response. We've reaffirmed our concern for those sectors of our economy. I mean, let's take the dairy products, and bringing them into India with cows which are being fed non-vegetarian. It's not going to be accepted in India.
Yeah.
And then GM products, GMO products, we have a certain position on
Yeah.
GMO products, genetically modified organisms. That I don't think we're going to change our position on any of these. So I think we have to
Right.
just be very calm and collected and take it into the future as it comes.
Right. And as I was saying, that President Trump has been making so many statements, almost a statement on a daily basis. Let's play his latest statement after the announcement of 25% tariff.
Mentioned today that India, in addition to its 25% tariff rate, would pay an additional penalty because of its support of Russia. What is that additional penalty? And are other countries facing the same threat?
Well, we're negotiating right now, and it's also BRICS. They have BRICS, which is basically a group of countries that are anti the United States, and India is a member of that, if you can believe it. It's an attack on the dollar, and we're not going to let anybody attack the dollar. So it's partially BRICS, and it's partially the trade, this trade situation. It's the deficit. We had a tremendous deficit. So, as you know, Prime Minister Modi is a friend of mine, but they don't do very much business in terms of business with us. They sell a lot to us, but we don't buy from them. You know why? Because the tariff is so high. They have one of the highest tariffs in the world. Now, they're willing to cut it very substantially, but we'll see what happens. We're talking to India now. We'll see what happens. It doesn't matter too much whether we have a deal or whether we charge them a certain tariff. But you'll know at the end of this week. August 1st is a very big day for this country because money is going to pour into the United States like we've never seen before. Yes, ma'am.
Right. How significant is this Trump's 25% tariff hike on Indian goods in terms of actual trade volume and impact?
Well, I think the experts have been making their calculations, and it seems that the impact will not be so significant. I'm sure there will be some impact at the margin, but I do not think the impact will be as significant as is being anticipated or feared. And once again, the stock markets are a very good judge of that. I think this question of BRICS, this is something that President Trump has been talking about. And we have made it very clear from our side that we are not in favor of de-dollarization. Absolutely not. We're not going to be part of any moves toward de-dollarization. What we have done is that we have launched into a number of national currency settlement agreements. Like we have
Right.
our previous experience with the rupee ruble trade agreement. We've got a number of such deals with other countries. Most recently, even with Maldives, when our prime
Yeah.
minister was in the Maldives, he said, "Okay, we'll have a national currency settlement agreement," and so on. So we're working on that because it helps bilaterally also to promote a more equitable exchange of goods, and it doesn't bring in any hard currency, and it preserves that country's hard currency reserves. So we've been talking about this, but we certainly are not part of any moves towards de-dollarization. We've said so categorically, and the BRICS is a long-standing grouping now. I think that many countries want to join BRICS, but I think one should look at this also in another context, and that is perhaps what President Trump may have had in mind: is India's leadership of the global South. And I think that is another very important aspect. And this is we find that there've been many virtual summits of the leaders of the global South, and they've been had good results, had good exchanges. And our prime minister has been visiting a number of countries of the global South and has got very, very warm and positive and greatly very strong responses from these countries. We know that the entire African Union grouping was brought into the G20 under India's chairmanship of the G20, and they have been welcomed as a member of the G20. So I think all these are very important indications that the countries of the global South are worried. They want to discuss these issues together, and they're looking towards India for leadership. And India is prepared to talk to them together because individual smaller economies may not be able to handle the situation on their own. But I think from this to talk about BRICS as an organization, I don't think BRICS is going anywhere. It will stay, and it will continue its work.
If India is a part of BRICS, India is also the part of Quad. Now, this
Yes,
is also a
absolutely.
fact. This is also a fact. In the last 15 years or so, leadership of both the countries have invested a lot of time and energy in building this relationship. How
Yes.
can there be one sticking point, and that can really damage this relationship? Because the way that these posts have been released by Trump, the statements, and calling Indian economy a dead economy, all this will have an impact.
Um, I think again it depends on how we try and react, and I think that from the side of the government, the reaction once again I must say is very correct and very cautious. I think this is a part of India's very strong foreign policy of strategic autonomy. That we believe strongly in multipolarity. We believe
Yeah.
in making our relationship. So as you said correctly, there's the Quad and there's BRICS. So we are strong members of both, and we are giving equal energy to developing the understanding and the camaraderie in both. So I think that this is something that India has maintained all along. This is not new. If you talk about the policy of non-alignment decades ago, which has now gone into something that I would much rather call as strategic autonomy, because we have said that we will deal with our relations with individual countries based on our own national interest and, of course, the national interest of that country. You find a mutually beneficial platform between any two countries or between any two groupings. And in this spirit, India believes that when we have relationships with different individual nations or with groupings, it's not at the cost of any other country or grouping. It stands alone on its own merit. And our decision, for example, to buy petroleum products from Russia is very much in keeping with our own national interests for our economy, which is heavily dependent on crude oil imports. You have the
Yes.
right to
Yes.
buy from the cheapest possible source. So we are not wrong to
Yes.
say that we will not buy from the
But
cheapest possible
but
source,
but but,
etc.
but
So
they
this is
get the assumption. They assume that once that oil is bought from Russia, Russia uses it for the Russia-Ukraine war. That is their assumption. But India has to look at its own national interest. It has to look
yes,
at it cannot be just America and India. There is a world besides that, and
of
that
course,
India has to
of
look
course.
at other places and other countries as well.
Yeah, that's right. And even the NATO chief is trying to make a similar allegation against India. Don't buy from Russia, or we will put a 500% tariff. They themselves are buying. Turkey, member of NATO, is one of the largest buyers of petroleum products from Russia. So they're not saying anything to Turkey, but they're saying something to India and China. So and to Brazil. So I think this is just something that they're trying to see where they get the maximum give. But I don't think from India there's going to be much give. But we are very balanced about it. We're very ready to talk in a balanced and cautious way, based strongly on our own national interest and carrying these forward in the best interest of our people. So I think that some countries saying 500%, another country saying 25% with additional penalty. I think this is a part of it, part of the pressure tactics. But I don't see that this will yield much on the India front. I think we will be going ahead, and we certainly will be examining and re-examining in our own interest what we need to do now.
Right. And talking about this Russia angle, he had also said that there will be an additional penalty, which will be over this 25% tariff.
Yes,
So
yes,
it
yes.
is not. It is rather a threat. How India has been buying equipments and other military infrastructure from Russia for years altogether, for decades altogether. It cannot just change it overnight. And why should it? India will have to look at its own interests, what suits it best. This looks like a blackmail.
Well, we do know that President Putin, President Trump, when he was campaigning for the elections last year, he had said that he would end the Ukraine-Russia conflict within 24 hours. We do know that that has not happened, but we do know that President Trump and President Putin have an understanding. They have a good direct relationship among each other. But nonetheless, given the interests of each of the sides and President Zelensky's reluctance to come to a deal with President Putin. This peace process has not worked out. And earlier, President Trump had given President Putin 50 days. Now he said 10 days. So this is a question of, shall I say, upping the ante and, bringing in more and more pressure for a peace. And I think that from the NATO side, they themselves are unable to handle this conflict in Europe, and they themselves are unable to bring in the additional expenditure, the additional defense expenditure, the additional defense purchases. They know it will have an adverse impact on their respective economies, so they're taking it out on India. I think that but again, we should be very calm and collected about it. I don't think they're going to have a strong reaction to any of the countries. We are prepared to
Right.
continue the negotiations, and let's see how it goes.
And lastly, how do you assess the durability of India-Russia relationship amid this pressure that's coming from the US and from President Trump? At the same time, there is growing US India security cooperation as well in many sectors.
Yeah, the India-USA relationship is an important one, very important one for India, and we want to continue it. I think this is very important. So this is part of the reason that our reaction will always be very calm and collected and cautious, because we don't want to affect the longer-term interests of the India-US relationship. And this is continuing. Look at the Nisar satellite launch 2 days ago. Look at the meetings that are taking place at various levels. The participation in exercises. All that is continuing. So it is this aspect which is very troublesome for President Trump's own internal constituency. And we know that even among his MAGA supporters, there are now a division of views on this using of Trump,
Yeah.
of the tariffs and so on. So I think all this is there. Let it all play out. There was a quad meeting, as you're showing the
Yeah.
visual, quad meeting at the foreign minister level in the USA
Yeah.
very recently. So I think we have to carry on with all of that, and we want to carry on with all of that. We don't want any of the processes to stop. That is why we are being, as I said, calm and collected and cautious, but doing our homework very, very well.
And lastly, US and Pakistan have signed a deal. Shehbaz Sharif has thanked Trump. And Trump has said that there are oil reserves that US would want to work with Pakistan to derive oil from that country, and said that perhaps Pakistan would later sell oil to India. Now, these random remarks, what do you make of this?
No, we have to just consider them as random remarks. I mean, USA is absolutely within its own rights to help Pakistan on any field that it thinks right. And if he thinks that at some point Pakistan will sell oil to India, well, that's an estimation. That may be his estimation. We have found enormous amount of reserves, for example, in the Andaman,
Yes.
region of India. And maybe
Yeah.
those will be exploited. We have found critical minerals in Gujarat, the bristlite and others. So, every
Yeah.
country is doing its own, as it does it in its own way, but we are not to be
Yeah.
disturbed by any of these kind of things.
Absolutely. But nevertheless, there will be implications of these statements. Of course, the negotiations are still ongoing. We'll have to wait and watch what will be the end result. But Trump is not backing down. He is, in fact, sort of escalating in his statements by calling India a dead economy. Thanks so much, Ambassador Veena Sikri, for joining us today and for sharing your thoughts. And thanks to our viewers for watching the Mojo Story. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.